You deserved everything you got. This is a union city.
That is a Philadelphia tradition.
Seize the means of podcasting.
Oh, God, the bosses crushed us.
Let me tell you one thing else.
In oldie-timey times,
Who said it? Kanye West or Thomas
we
Paine?
will not raw dog reality for that one.
The pleasure of the flesh is in solidarity.
The Scab Buster.
It's going to be wholly unprofessional.
Ape together strong. Let that be your mantra. John Henry Stump.
Stump?
Yeah. Reading's first and only socialist mayor.
Ooh.
And I should also point out, I'm going to be referring to him as Hen, because that was apparently his nickname. And that's what people called him.
Not like Stumpy?
No. He was called Hen because his father was John F. Stump. So he was John Jr. So
Okay.
they called him Hen, which is, I guess, which was short for Henry, but I don't know why he wasn't just Henry Stump.
Oh.
Sometimes he was also called J. Henry Stump.
I'm just going to call him Stumpy.
Okay. So Hen, or Stumpy, was born to John F. and Tilly Stump on June 4th, 1880. He was one of 6 siblings, and the family was pretty poor. And importantly, from a very young age, Hen, or Stumpy, was a worker. And he started as a newsboy at the age of 8 or 9. So he was out on the street corners in Reading hawking newspapers to passersby. And then he actually continued selling newspapers for 7 years, even after he had taken on other jobs. So at 13, his father, or when Hen, or Stumpy, was 13, his father became very ill and wasn't able to work full time anymore. So to help provide for his family, Hen dropped out of school and began work as an apprentice cigar maker at the Becker shop, which was at 8th and Oley Streets in Reading, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But there was a problem with that job. Namely, it was unpaid. So it didn't do much. So the way the shop was set up was you were supposed to work as an apprentice for 3 years without pay.
Uh-huh.
And then you could become a journeyman and you'd get a paycheck.
Okay.
Hen disagreed with that practice, and after 3 months went to his boss and said, listen, I'm just as skilled as any of the journeyman cigar makers, so you should give me an actual wage. And the boss said no. And Hen quit and went to work for the Glasser and Frame shop, which was another cigar shop in Reading, Pennsylvania.
Oh, really?
So he continued making cigars there, but actually got paid for it that time. So yeah, there was some interesting little bits of like unpaid child slave labor. So in 1896, when Hen was 16, his father moved the family to Philly to open up a wholesale milk business. Hen continued to help support the family, but now he worked with his father, helping out with milk deliveries. And there's a running theme with his early life here. There was another tragedy 2 years later. His father passed away, leaving his mother as a widow to raise 6 kids. Yeah. His eldest, or Hen's older brother, basically took over the family business.
Okay.
But they were definitely still struggling. And because of that, his mother moved the whole family back to Reading, where the older brother took a job at the Philadelphia and Reading Railroad Depot.
Oh, no.
And Hen tried to get a job to work with him there, but was deemed medically unfit.
Why?
It was, I believe, a lung condition.
Oh.
But it was actually interesting because in order to get a job at the Reading Railroad Depot, you had to get a medical exam to be part of the union health program, which existed because they were unionized.
Okay.
After the 1877 Great Railroad strikes.
All right.
So it all ties together.
Yeah, I'm thinking like 19th century lung problems. I don't even want to begin to think what that is.
Yeah.
That's like if you can see their lung coming out of one of the orifices, it's like, oh, you have a 19th century lung problem.
Yeah. Considering that he was probably breathing in tobacco dust for the past 4 years.
At least that. Yeah.
In addition to working outside as a paper boy in a 19th century city, so breathing in all of that stuff.
Well, what I think about is the ozone is 95% coal dust at this point.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, technically it still is. I don't think that shit really goes away.
But they did, there was a study done a couple years ago showing that Philly's topsoil still has really high lead content.
I shouldn't have eaten all that dirt when I was a kid, you're trying to say?
Probably.
Oh, okay. You only live once.
Yeah. Honestly, there's probably more lead in your pipes than in the garden anyway, so.
So you're watering your lead-based tomatoes with lead-based water.
Yeah, it's good for you. That's actually, pronouncing water as wooder isn't actually a dialect or slang or anything from Philly. That's just what happens when you're consuming so much lead. So then Hen went back to cigar making, which is great.
Man, it keeps calling him back.
Yeah.
What is this? It's probably the tobacco and the nicotine and shit like that.
Yeah, honestly, he probably was getting addicted by the tobacco or by the nicotine oil soaking through his hands. But then he eventually ended up working at the Commonwealth Cooperative Association, which was a commercial cooperative that would purchase cigars made by unionized cigar shops.
Yeah.
And then resell them. Because all of the capitalist firms were getting together and creating kind of like the predecessor to chambers of commerce. So you'd have a union of capitalist firms that all would make a pledge that they would never allow a union to form in their shops. And if you had a union form, then you wouldn't be allowed to do bulk orders with all of these other shops. So that was kind of him getting in touch with the labor movement early on. He got more involved with the labor movement because he got into newspaper printing. First at the Labor Advocate, which was basically a labor newspaper in Reading. And then he got elected president of the People's Press, which was another lefty newspaper in Reading.
Yeah.
In 1918.
That sounds very red.
Yeah. So that was in 1918. And that whole time, he was also really active in the Cigar Makers Union, and was elected as a delegate to the Federated Trades Council, which was the predecessor of the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO. Then he was actually elected president of the Federated Trades Council from 1914 to 1928. He was also very active in the Socialist Party, which was founded in the 1890s. He joined in 1902 and got elected to, as he said, he was elected to every office within the party except for secretary, because he explained it as they trusted me with the money but not the minutes. So,
all right, we're going to talk about last week's. What did we talk about last week and the week before that? And
So he avoided all of that by never being elected secretary, which was very smart of him. We should, however, say that when he first joined the Socialist Party in Reading, there were only 20 members of the Reading chapter. So probably like half of the party in Reading was getting elected to positions because they needed...
We have 25 positions and 20 people, so...
Yeah. So he stayed very active and was very supportive of the Socialist Party for the whole rest of his life, except for a very brief stint in 1926 when they were when there was a motion to reconcile with the Communist Party. So we should point out that the Communist Socialist Party split at this time was mostly a disagreement over methodology and organizational structure. So the Communist Party the Communist Party of the United States, which was founded in 1919, was basically the members of the Socialist Party that wanted to support the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. Mm-hmm. So they were the ones that looked at Lenin's revolutionary approach and said, yes, that's a good model and we should replicate that, versus the more democratic socialist mindset of other members of the Socialist Party. So the Communist Party was more so advocating for a vanguard party and basically following Lenin's model of vanguard party leading the revolution to establish state capitalism and then transfer the means of production from the state to the people.
Yeah.
The Socialist Party's approach was much more a mass movement, so creating a mass political body that would then bring about socialist change through democratic means with with close ties and often direct association with a radical labor movement. So you would not only have like an election every couple of years to try and get stuff passed, but you would also constantly agitate and have strikes and do all of that.
And an endless reading of the minutes.
Yes. Yeah, and lots of reading of the minutes. And then all of this was also happening while the anarchists over in the other corner of the ring were doing their own thing with lots of readings of the minutes. So, yeah, lefty division is nothing new. So in 1926, there was a movement within the Socialist Party to be like, hey, we can reconcile the differences between us and the Communist Party. We can figure this out. We can make this work, guys.
Yeah.
And
we have a common goal.
Yeah. And that it should also be pointed out that the Socialist Party in the US was still anti-capitalist. There were a lot of the social democratic parties in Europe were a lot more willing to cooperate with the capitalist class.
Yeah. Well, they would work in the system to try to get to their end goal.
Yeah. The Socialist Party in the US was, I would say, a lot of their rhetoric was much more based on advocating for democratic revolution.
Yeah.
So rather than immediately arming the peasants and lining up the capitalists against the wall, it's, we can have an election.
Yeah.
And then
try to get the votes, try to get our people in there and slowly start changing stuff.
Yeah. But by 1927, that the attempt to reconcile between Communist Party and Socialist Party didn't work. And especially after Lenin's death and as Stalin grew in power in the Soviet Union, then the differences between the two parties became more and more stark. Mm-hmm. But by 1927, Hen was back in the Socialist Party and importantly, the people of Reading were in the party with him.
Oh.
Yeah. So he got nominated to run for mayor. He never actually chose to run.
Really? You wrote him in, huh?
Yep. So he got nominated by another member of the Socialist Party, and he basically said, like, if they elect me, I will be mayor. That's kind of it. So on Tuesday, November 8th, 1927, 12,146 citizens of Reading, Pennsylvania, voted along the Socialist Party ticket. So it wasn't just him, it was him and 2 members of City Council that got elected from the Socialist Party. And then 2 years later, in 1929, 2 more socialists were elected to City Council. So by 1929, Reading, PA had a fully socialist government.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Yep.
Reading, I did not know this about you. Why haven't we talked sooner?
I know. He actually got elected 3 times, but not concurrently. So...
Oh, so Grover Cleveland did?
Yeah. So it was 1928 to 32, 36 to 40, and 44 to 48. And basically what it looks like happened was the Democratic Party was able to come in kind of on the New Deal wave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we should also note that, like, both the Democrat and Republican parties in Reading at the time were basically operating with machine politics. So they weren't really answering to the people. Some of the reporting on it, actually from the 50s, talking about him, noted that it was 85% of the Socialist Party was from a working class background, like Penn, who never went to college or anything. He spent his entire life basically
rolling cigars, and newspapers.
Yeah. And you could basically flip that for all of the other parties, that 85% of them were
not.
Yeah, they were
doing
like
any of that.
Yale and Harvard graduates. So once he got into office, he basically followed the sewer socialist model, meaning that he focused on, like, really bread and butter issues to help the citizens in Reading. So
stuff that actually matters.
Yeah. He wasn't going to personally, like, start the revolution in Reading, but he was going to make people's lives better. They built a new city hall. They built new firehouses. They got better equipment for both the firefighters and the police. They got a new band shell and a new auditorium for the parks. They built a new library. They established municipal garbage collection. Prior to that, you had to pay for it. Then they also, in proper sewer socialist way, they also improved the sewer system. Because you have to. Those accomplishments were across all 3 of his terms, kind of spread out. But during his second term, 1936 to 1940, which was during the Great Depression, he had to deal with some of the worst, well, not quite the worst of the Great Depression, but still a really terrible situation for most of his citizens. But again, he had an entirely socialist government and a massive public mandate to respond. And when I say entirely socialist government, from what I can tell, just about the only position in city government that they didn't hold at one point was the head of the school board, or the school superintendent. In 1938, he got the Glenside Homes built, which was a public housing project built by the Reading Housing Authority, which provided and still provides low-cost housing to low-income families.
Good on you, Stumpy.
So that's also, it was interesting to see that not only does the Glenside home still exist, but the Reading Housing Authority still exists and still operates it. Then they also did a land survey to get city zoning ordinances passed in 1938. So that at that time, Reading was only, I think it was one of 2 cities of its size that didn't have zoning laws.
What?
In Pennsylvania, at least.
Okay.
But still, there were, because it was, I think, 2 out of the 90 cities of its size. So those really were his 2 major accomplishments, were like getting Reading into the 20th century. So he, unfortunately, Stump passed away on May 15th, 1949. So it's probably the only reason why he didn't run for a 4th term. It's hard when you're dead.
You pulled an FDR.
Yep. Henn never thought it was his job to, like, bring about the total revolution. And he actually, speaking to the Socialist Party members in Philadelphia, he actually encouraged them, like, listen, all of this talk of revolution and destroying the capitalist system is great, but what actually gets you elected is going around and being like, hey, you need your trash collected. I'm going to get that done for you. And basically...
It's a series of baby steps, really. Especially in this country.
Yeah, jeez. At least from everything that I could tell, he was a, like, right and proper anti-capitalist socialist. But he never set it out as his goal to, like, be the vanguard from Reading, Pennsylvania, and tear down the whole system. He just knew that his job was to do what he was elected to do, which was improve the lives of the people in his city.
So you could say that his life was black and white and red all over.
How long have you been saving that?
About an hour and a half.
And I realized I forgot one other thing. He also had a pretty fantastic wife. And when he first got elected, all of the reporters came to his house. One of the questions was, how long have you been married? And he was completely unprepared for that because he was, like, thinking policy this entire time. And so he called upstairs to his wife. So then she came down and started answering questions, and she had one of the best answers. Because in 1927, the big culture war issue of the time was the younger generation wearing their hair in short bobs and being too quick to the bow wow. which is that was the quote from the Reading Eagle in 1927. Kids being too quick to the bow wow. And her response to that was, it's their hair, they can wear it how they want, basically. So she was like, I don't care what the kids are doing. If it makes them happy, that's fine. Which is a pretty awesome and forward-thinking stance for the 1920s.
Yeah, sure.
And even for today, that, like, if you're getting questioned about modern youth trends,
To go to the bow wow.
yes, I don't care what they're doing. It's not going to destroy society. And if teenage haircuts can destroy Western civilization
deserves to die.
There you go.